I met Gwendolyn Brooks when I was in the first grade, and she was a diminutive tornado. She was a torrent of charisma, waves of gravitas, challenging us, handing us flint and wood, and demanding that we light a spark that could light the world up with our words. Her eyes sparkled and she smiled, but when it came to the writing, she was all business. And we could have been tiny graduate students working on our tiny dissertations. If your poem won the class poetry contest, the prize was you could spend a day in a writer's workshop with Gwendolyn Brooks at William By Elementary School in Oak Park, Illinois. Some kids' earliest big deal memories are of their Disney vacations, the time they met Mickey or Minnie or rode on Space Mountain. Not that I didn't want those fantastic adventures, but my first fantastic adventure was the roller coaster of words, coasting with rhythm and syncopation, the thrilling words that can rise to the sky and then plummet with shock that can take your breath away. I spent the whole day writing poetry with Gwendolyn Brooks, and what I remember most about that day as a 6-year-old was that she called me a writer. Historians of early Christianity have determined that the very first book of the Bible that was ever written down, well, first was spoken before it was written, was, does anybody know, actually? Does anybody know what the very first book of Scripture was written down? The Song of Songs. That's right. The Song of Songs. The love poetry, reminiscent of Egyptian love poetry of that same era. And so many years later, when I began my academic journey with the Bible in seminary, we began at the beginning with the Song of Songs, sometimes known as the Song of Solomon. I guess what I'm saying is, first there was the Word, and the Word was poetry, and love poetry at that. And as long as the world has existed, there have been people trying to describe the world, to name it, to identify the world and ourselves in it. So, welcome. Welcome to the world of wild and holy poetry. Poetry is a sacred source of faith around here as much as any Bible. Around here, we begin our gatherings, we begin our meetings and our meals with poems. And if we remember, we end them with a poem too. Our board meetings are bookended by poetry, reminding us we do not serve Robert's Rules of Order, nor a divine authority, nor even ourselves. We serve the search for truth and meaning. We serve our ancestors who read poetry to each other and built communities that sustain us now. We serve the people out there who are feeling like outcasts, like castaways, and we serve the poetry. We let the words sink into our days and into our lives, into our meetings, and let them infuse us with wonder and purpose. Not every poem is about us, but every poem is for us. Poems like the one you just heard might just save a life. And we have not talked of suicide very much from this pulpit. But as Fred Rogers said, everything that is human is mentionable. This week, I listened and watched as certain lawmakers testified with shoddy knowledge and lack of evidence, false concern, mimicking empathy that they cared about Georgia's kids and youth. And most of them, honestly, if I'm honest about what I saw, most of them barely attempted to express care. Now, Nan, I know you're out there, and you are not one of the ones I'm talking about. You are doing the good and just work for our youth, and we stand with you. But these other folks are codifying fear and bigotry against transgender youth and families because they think it is politically winnable, and because they feel emboldened to continue to remove civil liberties and to continue to govern personal medical choices. And the threat to safety for trans kids is very real. And so I take the side of the poet with this one. I want the young to live, to remember they are green and they are spring. But it is we who make heaven. It is we who are responsible for making the world livable. It is up to us.